The Adrenaline Barbecue Company came up with a new Slow and Sear, the 2.0, and I had to try it, and I knocked out this amazing tri-tip. Coming up, I'll show you how. So a while ago, I made a video to see if you could use the cold grate technique without purchasing a Slow and Sear, and I found out that you could. But that video really felt like it was only half the story because I didn't give the Slow and Sear a chance, or I didn't have a chance to test it to see if it was better or easier in some way. So in the interest of full disclosure, I reached out to the Adrenaline Barbecue Company and told them that I would like to test their product, and they were nice enough to send it to me. But this is not a sponsored video. The opinions are my own, and I'm not going to get anything out of it whether you buy the product or not. My first impression of the Slow and Sear is actually a pretty good one. From looking at the pictures, I assumed that this metal was a lot thinner than it really is. This weighs about 8 pounds and is pretty solid, and it looks like it would stand the test of time and last forever. Now, the one thing I really do like is that the water container can come out, and so you can get a bigger sear zone if you'd like, and you can put it in when you do the low and slow, just depending on how you want to use it. Now, I want to get this thing dirty, so let's get going. Now the first thing you want to do is read the instructions. And I know a lot of times you want to skip that, but when I was talking with Dave, he said he put a lot of research into making sure that these techniques work for everybody. And so in here are the tips to make sure that you're successful. And I've done that, so we're ready to go. T-Roy from T-Roy Cook suggests that I use the Dry Brine Method, where you cover the meat with a half teaspoon of salt per pound, and then you put it in the fridge uncovered overnight. This locks in the moisture and pulls the salt inside and made a big difference. It really intensified the flavor of the meat. To set up your grill for the Sear, put about a dozen little briquettes on one side of the Slow and Sear and add some cherry wood for smoke and some extra coals to keep the fire burning at 250. I coated the tri-tip with oil and pepper. Now ignore that garlic in the corner, that's going to be for something else. Oops, you weren't supposed to see that yet. Once the tri-tip hits 90 degrees internal, flip it over for even cooking. This is also a good time to start a chimney of charcoal for the sear that's going to come up. Take the tri-tip off at 120 degrees and put it aside, and then put the charcoal in an even layer in the Slow and Sear. Grab your Champion No Rules Pinewood Derby car to stoke the flames. Or you could just use a blow dryer. The cold grate technique gets its name because you always put the meat on the cold grate, then you rotate it over into the sear zone. This method ensures that the meat is seared by the coals rather than the conductive heat of the grates and gives you an even steakhouse sear without burning the meat. You're going to cook both sides twice for 1 minute each. And each time you flip the meat over, you're going to put it on the cold side of the grill. Just don't walk away because it's really important that you get the timing right. When the minute is up, I flip the meat and put it on the cold side of the grill, being careful not to hit the bolt on the side of the kettle. Now this method is a bit scary as the fire surrounds your dinner, but it produces amazing, consistent results. And it's a whole lot cheaper than going out. Just look at that sear. Now once both sides have been seared twice, you're going to sear the meat on its side for another 30 seconds to finish it off. Finally, your temp should be around 125 to 127, but if it needs a little bit more heat, leave it on the cold side, and then take the meat off to let it rest for 15 minutes. When you cut through that amazing crust, enjoy the perfect medium to medium rare inside. You can use this meat in a bunch of different ways, but I made a killer sandwich. You're going to have to subscribe if you want to see it when that video comes out. So one of my subscribers asked, what's so bad about grill marks? Aren't they a hallmark of a true barbecue pitmaster? And the truth is, yes, that is a good way to show that you know how to grill by making the food look really good. Now, the only way I knew how to answer his question is to be able to show the difference between the two. And so what I did is I'm using the reverse sear method, and I'm going to cook 2 different pork chops. One using the cold grate technique, and the other I'm going to put directly on the hot grates so we can see the difference. I'm using the same technique as the tri-tip with the reverse sear, followed by the cold grate technique. Now the cold grate technique got a great sear without burning. The pork chop that was put on the hot grates got killer grill marks though. Now I prefer the cold grate cooked meat because of the even sear without the burning, but there are some that prefer the look of the crosshatch grill marks that come from hot grate. So why don't you try them both out and see which ones you prefer? After all, your barbecue's gonna be a flop. if they don't like your pork chops.
So at this point, I've done the cold grate technique 2 different ways. A couple of times I did it without the slow and sear, and I've done it a few times with the slow and sear. So I can compare and contrast which ones are easier or better. And what I found is that when you use the slow and sear, it's much more consistent. It's easier to use because it holds the coals right where you need them, and it's actually a little bit hotter than it is without the slow and sear. And the reason for that is you've got this plate right here, so instead of the air just going right over the coals, it gets forced underneath them and through. And when you think about it, you also have your chimney starter. Well, why does this start it so quickly? It's because the heat is down here, and then it gets sucked on through, and that creates a little bit more airflow, and that speeds up the process of heating it up. And the same thing happens right here in the slow and sear. Now, I haven't had a chance to do the other part of the namesake. I have had a chance to try the sear, but not the slow part. I'd love to check that out, and that's something that I plan to do in the future. But I have baked on it. I made some macaroni and cheese, and that turned out just great. So happy to use it. Now, if you want to check them out, they're at abcbarbecue.com. And you're welcome to look at the other products they have, ranging from the slow and sear, all the different sizes, the easy spin grate, the drip and griddle pan. If any of those interest you, go ahead and check them out. And I've got their link down in the description below.
Don't forget to subscribe to stay in tune with all of our videos. And one last tip, put your peppers on the grill and you'll roast them very quick.